Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unexpected Goals. This is your FA Cup quarterfinal preview. I'm going to be looking at all four FA Cup matches. Plus, at the very end, I'll give you out some percentages from simulations that I ran last night. If you're listening to this in podcast form, I invite you to go over to my YouTube channel, Unexpected underscore goals. And I actually kind of learned how to edit videos a little bit. It probably looks horrible compared to most of the videos you see on YouTube, but you know what? I'm learning, I'm trying out stuff, and even if it looks terrible, oh well. So let's just jump right into it. Again, there is going to be no betting advice in these type podcasts, trying to reach a larger audience, like I've said for the last two times. So this is strictly just going to be matchup based previews. So hopefully everybody is enjoying these type of podcasts and everything. But yeah, FA Cup quarterfinals, just like overarching look at it. You know, Manchester City is obviously your favorite to take home the FA Cup, but there are some interesting matches here. And we're going to start with Fulham and Crystal Palace, a little London derby. This is at Craven Cottage. And it's a very interesting match because the two meetings between these two have been like polar opposites. Fulham won the first one away at Selhurst Park 2-0, although Crystal Palace did get a red card, I think the 76th minute, I want to say, and they scored a, kind of a garbage time goal there, and expected goals was actually pretty even. But then the most recent meeting, I would say, is one of Fulham's worst matches they've played all season long. They had point 0.2 expected goals and 10 shots in the match, and Crystal Palace, while only holding 38% possession, controlled and dominated the match. Now, why did that happen? Well, what switched between the first meeting and the second meeting is Crystal Palace just took away the one thing that Fulham is good at, which is crossing. Fulham loves to build through the wide areas. What they really love to do is they love to get down the left side, right? They love to push Anthony Robinson up there. They love to use Calvin Bassey as the left center back to be able to carry the ball forward and sometimes get, a four-man diamond along with Emil Smith Rowe and whoever's playing on the left. Now, Anthony Robinson is very crucial to what Fulham does. This season, he's completed 26 crosses into the penalty area, which is the most in the Premier League. And if Fulham is not able to build through the wide areas and they're not able to cross the ball into the box, well, it just takes away their whole kind of tactical plan. They're not a team that is designed to play through the middle of the pitch. In that match against Crystal Palace, Fulham attempted 27 crosses and only completed one of them into the penalty area. I'm pretty sure it was on a set piece too, and it was like a very nothing header. So if you look at the shot map from the match, which I'm showing to you right now on my YouTube channel, all of Fulham's shots are pretty much just from outside the box. They're all just low quality chances. That's what Palace can do to you. Because Palace, although they've been pressing more and their press has improved in some aspects, when they can just sit in a 5-3-2, they are very, very difficult to break down. So I think this is going to be a very difficult match for Fulham, and it's really going to come down to the fact of can they defend those crosses and sit and defend those wide areas and make life difficult when Fulham is trying to send in those crosses so that those crosses don't find a body in the box, then I think they can be successful. But if they can't do that, then I don't think they can. Now, as far as Crystal Palace is concerned, you can see a noticeable difference now that Adam Wharton is in the lineup. I looked this up. He is averaging 9.36 progressive passes per 90. Only Martin Odegaard is averaging more per 90. That's how good Adam Wharton is. And him being in the double pivot of their 3-2-5 buildup is so crucial because he's able to progress the ball up to Sar and Eze, whether they're operating in the half spaces or in between the lines. And it just makes just makes Crystal Palace so much better. Now, honestly, they did struggle in possession in the previous meeting against Fulham. They actually ended up creating more expected goals from set pieces than they did from open play. And what Glasner really wants his team to do is create that five-man midfield overload, right? He wants the box midfield, with Eze and Sar, and then the two double pivot of usually it's Lerma and Wharton at this point. And then having Mateta, if he's available to play in this one, dropping deep, to create that five-man midfield, or Mateta use Mateta once they're able to get the ball to Eze or Sar to make that quick pass and have Mateta make those quick runs right and behind into the box. They're very, very good at doing that. The problem is Fulham is a very difficult team to break down. The 5-4-1 with the three center backs really kind of takes away and neutralizes teams that want to play, to want to have that, five-man overload. They've neutralized a lot of the best offenses in the Premier League this season. Now, with everybody healthy and, for Crystal Palace, I mean, it's tough to break down a low block, but they've also been so good lately, right? 18.5 expected goals over the last 8 matches. Only Liverpool has more over that time period. But it's really going to come down to, can Crystal Palace play through the middle? In the previous meeting, they didn't have a lot of deep entries, and the ones that they did have, none of them were into zone 14. They were all into the half spaces. So, you know, in reality, it's probably going to be pretty. The load is probably going to be more on Eze and Sar to take maybe some low quality chances and try to put them in the back of the net. Either way, I think this is more than likely going to be a pretty low event type match. If two teams just sit in a low block, I mean, I think both of them could be pretty dang good. Let's move on. Brighton and Nottingham Forest. What happened last time these two teams played? Oh, yeah. Forest put seven in the back of the nets. And what's funny about that is since that match, Brighton has ripped off 6 straight wins and then they drew Manchester City. Now, this is something I've highlighted before, and it's very, very important. Go look at all of the opponents that they played through those 6 wins: Chelsea twice, Southampton, Bournemouth, Newcastle, and Fulham. Only one of those teams is actually a low block defending team. All the other ones are just teams that press high. That's so important because of the way Herzler wants to play. He likes to vacate the midfield, although recently he's been kind of utilizing a little bit more of a double pivot. He did against City for a little bit. But in this type of match, he may try and do that as well. He did that against Nottingham Forest. He used the double pivot in the second half because they were just having no success playing direct balls. So he thought, let's get ourselves a nice 5v4 through the first phase and try to do something there. But it just didn't work because Brighton struggles breaking down low blocks. Even that win against Fulham, there was a penalty in there, and they only created 0.66 goals from open play. Their 2 goals came off a penalty and a set piece. They didn't do anything against Fulham's low block. And in the previous match against Nottingham Forest, the problem, what was happening is they were just circulating the ball around, trying to find pockets of space. João Pedro and Ruder were dropping deep into those half spaces and getting the ball. And every time they got the ball, Nottingham Forest was winning the ball off them. They couldn't operate in there. So it came down to a point where it's like, all right, we kind of just got to send in crosses, and Danny Welbeck's our best aerial threat, which he's not saying he's a horrible aerial, player in the air. But when you're going up against Murillo and Milinkovic, it's a very, very difficult pair to send in crosses against, right? And in that match, there's an old saying that basically says whoever wins the most duels more than likely wins the match. Well, Nottingham Forest won 63 duels compared to 51 for Brighton in that previous match. 16 aerial duels compared to 18. So if Brighton isn't able to cross the ball into the box and they're not able to play through the middle and they're not able to break down Nottingham Forest slow block, how are they scoring? Right? Like, that's the question. And I don't really think they have an answer for it right now. At least they did in the previous meeting. Now, I know you're going to say, oh my gosh, 7 goals. They're obviously not going to do that again. And if they do, well, then maybe they do deserve to win the Champions League next year. 3.3 of expected goals off of those 7 in the previous meeting. And quite honestly, it was just a load of what Nottingham Forest does well and everything going right. They attacked the first goal. They attacked Brighton in the wide areas. They pulled Lamptey out of position, and they were able to play a nice ball in behind and create a goal off a cross. They scored a goal off a set piece. Then they scored one, on a transition break, and that's really what they do, right? They just capitalized on Brighton's mistakes and on set pieces and in transition. They have really good ball carriers and ball progressors, and Morgan Gibbs White and Elliot Anderson, who can dribble through people, actually retain possession when They actually win the ball in their own final third because it's a very difficult thing to do, right? If you're defending in a low block, you got to find a way to transition from that low block. And when a team like Brighton, the reason they were circulating the ball a lot is because they wanted to have a good rest defense for when Nottingham Forest won the ball. They could easily win it back. But when you have good ball carriers and guys who can dribble through people, like I just mentioned, those two guys, you can really break down a good rest defense, and you can really create a lot of good transition breaks. And that's what they did. That's really what they're gonna have to do here again to, I think, to be successful. And because they're not going to build out of the back against Brighton's press. And what's funny is I encourage you all you can look it up on Twitter. It's from I'm gonna put the image right here right now on my YouTube but it's from Huddle Stats Bomb, and it's basically every team's uh, most common passes from open play. And Nottingham Forest is quite funny. It's just all direct balls from the keeper to the left side of the pitch. And what they do is from goal kicks is they just position everybody on that left side and they just try to get the ball to Chris Wood and let him win an aerial duel, or they try to win second balls. So, like I go back to the original point, right? If you can win majority of the duels, you can win a majority of the second balls, and you can be more physical and you can, outwork your opponent, you're more than likely going to win. And that's what Nottingham Forest has been doing all season long, and that's what they're going to do here in the quarterfinals against Brighton. So if you're looking for how does Nottingham Forest win this match, they win the more majority of the duels. They're good on set pieces and they're effective in their transition breaks. That's how they're good offensively. All right, let's move on to Preston versus Aston Villa, the last championship team left in the FA Cup. Preston did not have to face a Premier League team to get here. They did beat Burnley 3-0. They have played one Premier League team this season. They lost 3-0 to Arsenal in the League Cup. I'm going to be flat honest with you. I have not watched much of Preston North End this season. They are managed by Paul Heckingbottom, former Sheffield United manager. He has them playing out of a 5-3-2. It's more than likely going to be direct counter-attacking football. They're more than likely going to sit deep in this match. Offensively, it's just going to come down to, can they take advantage of Aston Villa's high line and the chances that they do get, you know, obviously put a big, huge emphasis on set pieces. They're 10th in the championship in XG per set piece. They are only averaging 1.13 expected goals per 90 minutes though, and a lot of their offensive metrics really aren't good. 21st in box entries, 20th in final third to box entry conversion rate, which is not really that good if you're mainly a transition team. You like to see, you know, if you're a team that mainly does play counterattacking football and you have a low amount of final third entries, you want to be able to convert those final third entries into box entries, right? So, not that good for Preston North End. But on the flip side of it is they are a pretty good defensive team. 1.09 expected non-penalty expected goals allowed in the championship this season. They're allowing the second longest average shot distance, which is pretty decent. You know, Aston Villa in the most recent round of the FA Cup played a 5-3-2 team in Cardiff, but Cardiff is one of the worst teams in the championship. And in that match, Villa created 3.5 expected goals off of 25 shots. And while it's true they've dominated a team like Cardiff, they created a ton of expected goals against Ipswich, although Ipswich did get a red card in the 40th minute. I was kind of going back and I was like, all right, when's the last time that they truly faced like a low block team? And I think it was against Wolves on February. I think it was February 2nd, February 1st, one of those two dates. In that match, Aston Villa had a 70% field tilt and held 68% of the ball. They only ended up creating zero point 0.4 expected goals. And the problem is that when you are a team like Aston Villa, who, they're mainly successful playing through the middle, and they just don't send a lot of crosses in the box. They're 18th in crosses completed in the penalty area. So when you don't rely on sending a lot of crosses in the box and you're really not able to play through the middle, you can see why they tend to struggle, right? I mean, the biggest thing is with Unai Emery is he wants to bait teams into pressing him. Like he will do whatever he can to bait them, but I don't think Preston's going to be taking the bait. I think they're going to be sitting back and they're going to be waiting for their opportunities. So Aston Villa should go through. I have them at 76, about 76% to qualify here for the next round. So in reality, this should be pretty routine for Villa. In the final match, and this is a fun one, Bournemouth versus Manchester City. Um, I think Bournemouth is just going to hammer City right down the left flank, and they are going to go right after. I mean, my guess is because I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty certain that Nathan Ake, Akanji, and Stones are all not available for this match, which likely means it's going to be a back four of on the right side at least of Kusanov and Rico Lewis, which is Kusanov has made he's obviously very talented, but he is very raw. And as we've seen, he can be mistake prone. Rico Lewis is not a good defender, and he's someone honestly that likes to invert into the middle of the pitch when Manchester City are in possession. And so what that does is when you lose the ball, you leave a lot of space down that left flank. And boy, oh boy, with Semenyo and Kirkez just bombing. I mean, I mentioned this last week, but Kirkez has made the most overlapping runs in the Premier League by like a pretty wide. Him and Anthony Robinson by a pretty wide margin over anybody else. Him and Semenyo combining on that left side, and then Kluivert, or whoever's playing in the middle, coming over to create a passing triangle to create chances off of crosses. It's very, very good. And when you have two questionable defenders on the right side there, that is where Bournemouth can really take advantage of it. I looked this up as well. Manchester City is allowing they obviously don't face a lot of crosses because they hold a lot of possession, but in terms of percentage of crosses that are allowed into the penalty area, they're at 15.82%. That's the highest mark in the Premier League. And also, Manchester City, their press was better against Brighton, but since the beginning of February, they have a pass per defensive action of 13.47. That's the fourth worst mark in the Premier League behind only Everton, Nottingham Forest, and West Ham. So, where can Bournemouth be successful? Not true. Well, they don't really try to build out of the back. It's just getting the ball down the left flank, allowing Kirkez to bomb, creating opportunities in transition, counterattacking opportunities. What's funny is the previous meeting, because they've only met once so far. The previous meeting was right at the beginning of the Manchester City downfall. And if you remember, Bournemouth beat them 2-1, created two expected goals, and then after that, City ended up losing four more matches. Three more matches, drew Feyenoord, and then lost to Liverpool. And that just kind of began the downslide and was really what they did. Bournemouth was they kind of just exposed City in transition. But what's interesting in this match, I think, is how effective City is building out of the back against Bournemouth's press. Because what Bournemouth's press is designed to do is you'll see this throughout the match, is the forward, which most likely be Even Nielsen, will make a curved run at the goalkeeper to force him to kick the ball to the side of the pitch where they want to set up the press. Now, when teams have done this to Manchester City, Brentford is a good example. I remember them doing it like basically every single time to City. Um, City just said, "All right, well, if you're gonna leave Holland 1v1 against your center back, we're going after it 100 times out of 100, right?" And especially if he wants to move over against Dean Hewson, um, that's a matchup Holland's gonna win. He's way bigger than him, and he's gonna win that duel 1v1 almost 70-80% of the time. So I think that's the interesting question is, does City essentially take the bait? Do they try and do what Liverpool did against Bournemouth, which is essentially say, okay, we'll pass the ball where you want us to pass it, but then we're going direct right from there, which forces Bournemouth into a man-to-man situation because they want to go from a zonal press to a man-to-man press. So once you make that initial pass, that's where Bournemouth jumps, and then you can play balls over the top. And that's what a lot of teams have been doing against Bournemouth or you can go the Tottenham route and just have like 40 dangerous losses and 12 high turnovers, which is going to happen if you decide to do that against Bournemouth. So Bournemouth's defense, though, certainly hasn't been great lately. 10 expected goals allowed in their last six Premier League matches. So I have no doubt that City, if they can evade the press or get past the first line of the press, they're more than likely, if they do they will try to find some type of central overload because what the Bournemouth press is also where it's weakest is those switch balls and then balls centrally. If you can get those balls into the middle of the pitch, which is they're very hard passes to get there, but when you get there, you can open them up. And Bournemouth transition defense when you it hasn't been that great this season. They're 17th in final third to box entry conversion rate allowed and 14th in expected threat. So it's not like Bournemouth's defense is, incredible. It's just the press that allows them to create a lot of those transition opportunities. All right. So, and then for simulations, real quick, I'll just run through each percentage. I have Manchester City at 26.14%. This is to win the FA Cup. Aston Villa 16.42%, Brighton 16%, Fulham 13.25%, Bournemouth 9.7%, Crystal Palace 9.62%, Nottingham Forest 7.66%, and Preston 0.47%. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Unexpected Goals. I will be back Monday morning, full preview of the English Premier League midweek slate. Until then, enjoy the FA Cup, enjoy the weekend of matches, and we'll see you on Monday.